I planned a luxury cruise for my children as a surprise. Days before departure, my stepmother surprisingly replaced them with my sister's children, saying they deserved it more. My reaction left everyone speechless. I used to believe that family meant support, that even if they took advantage of you, even if you swallowed every insult, it was worth it because you were part of something bigger. But sometimes, family are just people who know you'll never say no to them. I dried my hands with a kitchen towel and looked at the clock. 6:47 p.m. Any minute now, my dad and stepmother would arrive, uninvited as always. From the other room, I could hear my children laughing, arguing, creating their own little world of chaos. They were naturally loud, full of life, and that's exactly why my stepmother hated them. They're uncontrollable. You've spoiled them completely. Her voice still echoed in my head. Although our last argument had been days ago, do you even discipline them, or do you just let them do whatever they want? I clenched my jaw, but didn't answer. It wasn't worth it. She had already decided on her own truth. Mom, are we really going on the cruise? Valeria asked, bouncing with excitement. Grandma said it's going to be amazing. I smiled, brushing a curl away from her face. Of course, sweetheart. You and Nicholas are going to have a wonderful time with Grandpa and Grandma. Just a few more days, and you'll be on that big ship eating ice cream every day. This cruise was supposed to be special, a vacation just for the kids and their grandparents. Something carefree and exciting, something that would give them new experiences while I enjoyed a much-needed break. I had planned every detail, paid for everything, and made sure my parents had the best accommodations. They didn't have to lift a finger. All they had to do was enjoy time with my children. The front door opened without warning. Hello, dear. Rose's voice echoed through the house, saccharine and insincere. My father followed her in silence, as always. He never interfered, never stopped her. I turned and forced a polite smile. Not today, I told myself. Don't start anything today. Right on time, I said. I was just about to finalize the cruise details. She smiled, a slow, calculated smile, the kind that made your stomach churn. About that, she began, taking off her coat and leaving it on the chair. We had to make a small change. I froze, my fingers tightening around the counter. What change? She sat down, crossing her legs elegantly, as if she were about to discuss something trivial like dinner plans, not something I had spent months organizing. We decided that your sister's children would benefit more from this trip. Silence. I stared at her, not fully grasping her words at first. I'm sorry. She sighed as if I were the one being irrational. Well, after our little discussion the other day, I realized that your children really don't deserve this trip. They're too undisciplined, too much work, and frankly, I thought it would be a good lesson for you. You need to learn how to properly raise them. A flashback hit me like a slap. 3 nights ago, dinner at my father's house. Nicholas, Valeria, sit properly. Rose's voice boomed across the dining room as she glared disapprovingly at my son, who had only tried to reach for the bread basket. They're just excited, I said lightly, trying to keep the peace. Excited? They're uncontrollable. Look at them, she snapped, her perfectly manicured fingers gripping her wine glass. You've raised them like wild animals. No respect, no discipline. Excuse me? My voice turned sharper, my patience wearing thin. You heard me. She placed her glass on the table with a thud. You let them do whatever they want. They need structure, rules. Your sister's children, they know how to behave. They're polite. They know how to listen, perhaps because they're afraid of their mother, she muttered. She'd been waiting for this moment, the perfect opportunity to teach me a lesson. A cold, sharp anger spread through my chest. You replace my children? My voice sounded eerily calm. She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't be dramatic. They'll have another opportunity. But your sister's children have had a difficult year, and well, they're easier to manage. It's best for everyone. My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but said nothing. He never did. Something inside me snapped, but I didn't yell. I didn't argue. Instead, I reached out and picked up my phone, my fingers steady. Oh, I said lightly, No problem. With a few taps on the screen, I canceled everything. Every ticket, every suite, every excursion gone. Rosa's smile faltered. What are you doing? Silence stretched across the room like a taut wire, ready to snap. My stepmother stared at me, blinking as if trying to process what had just happened. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. You canceled the trip? She asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. I looked at her directly. That's right. But that's ridiculous, she sputtered, with a forced laugh, as if she'd just heard a bad joke. The cruise is tomorrow. Do you have any idea how complicated it was to organize everything? What are we going to tell your sister's children? I crossed my arms. Tell them exactly what you told me. That plan's changed. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. My father let out a heavy sigh. Come on, honey. Be reasonable. The trip is already paid for. No, Dad. My voice was ice. I paid for it. And if my children aren't going, then nobody is going. The first flicker of understanding crossed his face. You mean you canceled everything? The rooms, the tickets, every little detail? I confirmed. The color drained from Rosa's face. You're acting like a child. Really? I tilted my head. Because I remember someone changing plans without asking. You decided my children didn't deserve to go. Now, nobody goes. Rosa jumped to her feet, her expression darkening with contained rage. You had no right. No. I cut her off coldly. You had no right to make that decision, to treat my children as if they were less than your precious golden grandchildren. You wanted to teach me a lesson? Well, here's one for you. You don't decide on my generosity. Her breathing was heavy, her nostrils flaring with fury. She turned to my father, expecting him to intervene, to take her side, as he always did. But for the first time in years, he hesitated. He frowned as he looked at me, as if something was starting to make sense in his mind, something he should have understood a long time ago. You canceled everything, he repeated, his voice softer this time. I nodded. And you're really okay with losing all that money? I let out a short laugh. Oh, don't worry. I'm getting it all back. Rosa's eyes widened. What? I pulled out my phone again and turned the screen towards them, showing the confirmation of the refund from Atlantic Cruises. Full refund. The travel insurance covered cancellations for any reason, and since I booked it through my corporate account at Caixa Madrid, pulling some strings, every penny would be returned to me. For a moment, the room was absolutely silent. And then Rosa's face twisted with fury. I repeated, putting the phone back in my pocket, just undid all your work in 2 minutes. I hope it was worth it. You're ungrateful. Rosa spat, snapping me out of my thoughts. I exhaled.
Why?
For realizing that you consider my children not good enough? For being tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family? She stepped towards me, jabbing a perfectly manicured finger into my chest. All I've done is try to help you. I let out a cold laugh. Help me? Let's review what your help looks like. I counted on my fingers. You took money from me for family emergencies, while my kids went without things they actually needed. 1 finger. You called me selfish every time I dared to do something for myself. 2 fingers. You never defended my children when they were compared to your better-behaved grandchildren. 3 fingers. Her lips pressed into a thin line. And now you went behind my back and removed my children from a trip that I planned, paid for, and organized, without even telling me. 4 fingers. I lower my hand and took a step back. That's not help. That's control. And you don't have it over me anymore. My father stood up abruptly. Honey, let's calm down. No. I interrupted him firmly. I'm done being calm. I'm done being the person who always turns the other cheek. I grabbed my purse and turned towards the door. Where are you going? My father asked. Home. I replied coldly. Because unlike some, I actually want to spend time with my children. I walked out of the house and slammed the door shut. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel guilty for leaving them behind. The moment I stepped out of my father's house, my phone exploded with messages. It was to be expected. Rosa wasn't the type of person who took humiliation quietly. I locked my phone as I walked to my car, dismissing the missed calls. 3 from Dad. 5 from Rosa. New message, Rosa. You're being ridiculous. Call me right now to fix this mess. New message, Rosa. You're going to apologize for your behavior. I don't care how angry you are. You are not going to ruin this trip for your father. New message, Dad. Honey, can we talk? I let out a sarcastic laugh. Now he wanted to talk. I reached my car, slid into the driver's seat, and locked the doors. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear, but from the pure adrenaline of having stood up for myself. I put my hands on the steering wheel and took a deep breath. And just as I was about to put the phone aside, another notification popped up on the screen. Incoming call, my sister. Here we go. I exhaled sharply and pressed decline. 15 minutes later, my sister showed up at my house. I had barely stepped inside when I heard the knocking on the door. It wasn't normal knocking. It was furious, insistent pounding, the kind of punches against the wood that would make the neighbors call the police. I closed my eyes, already regretting having even answered the first time. But if I hadn't, she would have kept knocking until I was forced to. I sighed and turned the doorknob. And there she was, Carla, my perfect, impeccable, always right older sister. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her makeup flawless despite the hour, and she was wearing one of her designer coats, the kind that screamed money. Are you serious? She snapped before I could even greet her. Lovely to see you too, Carla. I replied dryly. She pushed past me and into my house without invitation, her heels clicking against the wood as she stormed into my living room. What did you do? She demanded, turning to face me. Do what? I feigned ignorance. Her eyes flashed with fury. Cancel the trip. I leaned against the doorframe. Oh, you mean the trip I paid for? That one. Don't start with that, she groaned in frustration. Mom says you overreacted. You know her, she didn't mean it. I laughed. I actually laughed. Carla's lips tightened into a thin line. What's so funny? You, standing there acting like this is just a little misunderstanding, like I should just accept it and move on. You should, she huffed. It's just a vacation, for God's sake. You made this into a much bigger drama than it needed to be. Right, just a vacation. Just my children. Just another way to remind me that we'll never be enough. Carla rolled her eyes. Here we go with the victim speech. And there it was, the condescension, the disdain, the same thing she had done her whole lives. You always do this, she continued, throwing her hands in the air. You play the victim in every situation, as if the entire world is against you. I felt years of resentment bubbling inside me, threatening to erupt. I didn't play the victim, Carla. Mom did that for me when she decided that my children didn't deserve a trip that I paid for. She never said they didn't deserve it. Carla hesitated, just for a second. She called them undisciplined, uncontrollable, too much work. Carla, I said coldly, she meant it. And you know it. She exhaled through her nose, clearly trying to maintain her composure. Look, just fix it. Reschedule the trip. Let the kids go. Don't let this turn into a family war. Too late, I said simply. Carla's jaw tensed. You know what? Forget it, she snapped, turning towards the door. I should have known you wouldn't be reasonable. You never are. I let her get to the doorway before speaking. Oh, by the way, Car, she turned back, frowning. What? I gave her an icy smile. Since you're here, tell Mom she'll be getting the bill for the non-refundable deposits. For the first time, genuine panic crossed her face. Wait, what? What deposits? Oh, you thought everything was refundable? I tilted my head with feigned innocence. The excursions, the VIP dinner at L'Eau Enchante, the luxury suites, those were special requests I added, just for them. And those are non-refundable. Her mouth opened, then closed. How much? She asked, suddenly more cautious. I smiled. 12,000. Carla went pale. You're lying. Really? You want to test that theory? I pulled out my phone, opened the confirmation emails, and showed her the balance. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Mom is going to lose it. Oh, I know, I said, enjoying every second of this. Carla turned back to the door, fumbling for her phone. Wait till she hears this, she muttered, already typing frantically. Oh, tell her one more thing, I added sweetly. Carla sighed in frustration. What else? I smiled. That next time she wants a free vacation, she pays for it herself. And with that, I closed the door in her face. That night, as I tucked my children into bed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't regret. It wasn't guilt. It was relief. For the first time, I had drawn a line. A real, unbreakable, and expensive line. And something told me this was just the beginning. I woke up to 23 missed calls. 15 from Rosa, 5 from my father, 3 from Carla. I let out a long sigh, already knowing perfectly the kind of storm that awaited me. And sure enough, as soon as I unlocked my phone, the messages started flooding the screen. Rosa, I hope you're happy. Your father is devastated. I don't know how you can live with yourself after what you did. Rosa, your sister's children were so excited. Can you imagine how they feel now? You didn't just hurt me, you hurt innocent children. Do you even care? Rosa, I hope you're ready to explain this to your father when he calls. I told him everything. Carla, Mom is furious. She's talking about taking legal action. You've lost your mind. Carla, just fix it. It's not too late yet. Dad. Honey, please call me. We need to talk. I rubbed my temples. I was already exhausted, and it wasn't even 7 a.m. And just as I was about to put the phone down, another notification appeared. Incoming call, Dad. I hesitated for a moment, then sighed and answered. Honey, his voice sounded tired, as if he'd aged overnight. Can we talk? We are talking. Silence. Look, I know you're upset, but was it necessary to cancel the whole trip? I closed my eyes briefly and pinched the bridge of my nose. Dad, she took my children off a trip that I paid for without telling me. Exactly what did you think was going to happen? He sighed. I just think that maybe you overreacted a bit. Overreacted? I repeated slowly, my tone dangerously calm. Dad, if someone had done this to Carla's kids, would you be saying the same thing? Another silence. That's not the point. It's exactly the point, I interrupted, my voice turning harder. You've been letting her walk all over me, always. You say you don't want to get involved, but what that really means is you don't want to stand up to her. It's not that simple, he murmured. Yes, it is. You just don't want to deal with the consequences. Silence. For the first time, I heard him exhale shakily, as if the weight of this conversation was finally landing on his shoulders. Your stepmother just wanted to do what's best for the family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it.
No, Dad.
She wanted to do what's best for her version of the family. One where I'm just the person who pays for everything, but never has a say.
He didn't respond.
Let me make this easy for you, I said, my voice turning to pure ice. It's over. It's over paying for everything. It's over fixing the family's problems. If Rosa wants a vacation, she can pay for it herself. If Carla's kids need a trip, she can pay for it. Honey, no, I interrupted, feeling a strange sense of finality settling in my chest. This was my last show of generosity, and you let her throw it away. A long silence. And then, for the first time in years, my father said something that sounded genuine. I don't know how to fix this. I closed my eyes. You can't, I replied softly, because you're 20 years too late. And I hung up. The next few hours were utterly peaceful. No calls, no messages. I had a late breakfast with my children, took them to the park, and simply ignored the rest of the world. But by mid-afternoon, I knew it was only a matter of time before she showed up. And sure enough, at 3:14 p.m. on the dot, my doorbell rang. I didn't move. It rang again, longer this time, then loud, insistent knocking. I sighed, finally getting up. Better get this over with, I muttered to myself. I opened the door, and there she was, Rosa. Her always perfectly coiffed hair now looked less than perfect. Her designer blouse had a few wrinkles, but her eyes were filled with pure fury. "We need to talk." I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. "I don't think we have anything to say to each other." She pushed the door open and walked in as if she owned the place, as she always did. I let her because, honestly, this was about to get interesting. She turned to me, hands on her hips. "What is wrong with you?" I smiled mockingly. "Could you be more specific? You ruined this trip. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Oh, I have a pretty clear idea. Your sister is panicking, the kids are devastated, your husband is heartbroken, and I'm sitting here acting immature and selfish." I tilted my head, feigning thought. Sounds a lot like your problem, not mine." Her face twisted with rage. "You are unbelievable. I always knew you were selfish, but this is a new level." I sighed dramatically. "And yet, somehow, I'll manage to live with it." She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "You have to fix this." I laughed, a slow, cold sound. "No." Her nostrils flared. "You can't just say no." "Oh, but I can," I shrugged. "And in fact, I just did." She spluttered, her face turning red with anger. "You can't just. I can do whatever I want. And you?" I took a slow step towards her, watching as for the first time in her life, she took a step back. "You just learned what happens when you push someone too far." Her breathing was ragged, her hands trembling at her sides. "You think you've won? This isn't over." I laughed. "Oh yes, it is. It was over the moment you decided my children weren't good enough for you." Her jaw tensed, but she said nothing. So I smiled and opened the door. "Goodbye, Mom." Her eyes flashed with fury. She hated it when I called her that, with that tone laced with sarcasm, devoid of all affection. She stormed out, and this time, I locked the door behind her. That night, as I tucked my children into bed, my daughter looked at me, frowning. "Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Did we do something bad?" she whispered. "Is that why we're not going on the trip?" My chest tightened painfully. I stroked her hair gently. "No, my love," I said softly. "You didn't do anything wrong." She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded and turned over, hugging her teddy bear tightly. And as I stood there watching them sleep, I felt something inside me shift. This wasn't just about revenge anymore.
It was about protecting them.
And if that meant burning every last bridge to keep them safe from this family, so be it. The silence after Rosa left felt different this time. It wasn't a silence heavy with guilt. It wasn't a suffocating silence of regret. It was peace. For the first time in my life, I had said no, and I meant it. I sat in the living room, looking at my phone, waiting for the next round of attacks. But something told me I wouldn't have to wait long. And sure enough, not even an hour had passed when my phone vibrated. "Incoming call. Dad." I exhaled slowly, debating whether to send it to voicemail. But almost immediately, another notification popped up. "Incoming call, Rosa."
And another.
"Incoming call, Carla." I rolled my eyes. Now they were desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I let them all go to voicemail. But Carla wasn't one to give up easily. A few seconds later, my phone vibrated again. "New message, Carla. Answer the phone. Mom is losing her mind. Dad is panicking. You have to fix this now." "New message, Carla. She's talking about getting lawyers involved." I smiled with amusement. This was only getting better. I tapped my fingers against my knee, thinking, they wanted to play dirty?
Fine.
I'd show them how dirty I could play. I opened my email and scrolled until I found what I was looking for. A contract. A signed and validated contract. I clicked on the file and let the text sink in, smiling to myself. Oh, they were going to hate this. Flashback, 2 months ago. "That's a lot of money," my coworker, Hugo, said, looking at my laptop screen. "I know," I murmured. "It's for my kids." I responded automatically, but something was nagging at me. And then Hugo raised an eyebrow. "And you trust your stepmother with this?" I hesitated.
No.
I didn't trust her one bit. "I know," I murmured. It's for my kids. I responded automatically, but something inside me was uneasy. Your stepmother, you trust her with this? Hugo raised an eyebrow. I hesitated.
No.
I didn't trust her one bit. Then protect yourself, he shrugged. Put it in writing. A contract. Make it official. I stared at him. A contract? Yeah, something simple. Just a document that sets out some conditions. Since you're paying for everything, if they breach the agreement, they owe you money. A slow smile spread across my face. Hugo, you're a genius. Present. I forwarded the email with the contract directly to Carla. 30 seconds later, my phone rang. Incoming call, Carla. This time, I answered. What the hell is this? She shrieked before I could even say hello. I smiled, settling back comfortably on my couch. That, dear sister, is a legally binding contract. You can't be serious. Oh, I am very serious. You thought I was going to let her take my money and walk away. But, she's your family. Carla sputtered. She agreed to my terms when she let me cover the entire trip, I said simply. She took my money, signed a contract, and now she's breached that contract. So yes, she owes me money. Silence. Then, in a lower, more strained tone, Carla whispered, Mom is going to lose it. She should have thought about that before she played games with me. Carla took a deep breath, trying to control her voice. Okay. We can be reasonable. Maybe we can work out a deal. Oh, now you want to negotiate? I asked, amused. Look, we can settle this without lawyers, right? She said quickly. Maybe Mom can pay you back in installments, or maybe you could just… No. What do you mean no? I mean no, Carla. My voice hardened. Mom always gets her way. She manipulates, she twists things, she does what she wants, and you and Dad let her. But I'm not playing this game anymore. She owes me money, and she's going to pay it. Carla was silent. For the first time in her life, she didn't have an answer. You're serious? She murmured finally. Absolutely serious. I would sue her for this if she forces me to. Another long silence. This is going to destroy the family, Carla said softly. No, Carla. I replied with calm coldness, finally feeling free. The family was already broken. I just stopped pretending it wasn't. And I hung up. That night, I opened a bottle of wine, curled up on my couch, and waited for the explosion, for the meltdown, for the moment my stepmother realized she no longer had control. And sure enough, at 9:02 p.m. on the dot, my phone exploded with calls. Dad.
Carla.
Rosa. I didn't answer, because this time I was done. After canceling the cruise and confronting my stepmother, I'm facing a difficult decision: seek justice in the courts or try to reach a peaceful solution. Did I do the right thing by defending myself? Should I sue her? Or is it better to try to reconcile?